How many people here have flown out of the island airport? Just to be totally honest. Okay, so most of you, you're pretty familiar. Porter has grown a pretty successful business over a fairly short period of time for a couple of reasons. Most people love the convenience, and the fact is that in a sort of 500-mile radius, you know, you can go to the business centers, Ottawa, Montreal, New York, Boston, Chicago kind of circle. And so the convenience has been a positive attribute. If you've been on the planes, you know they give you good service, etc., etc. So I don't disagree with any of that. The issue, I think, with the greatest respect to everyone, is not a continuation of the airport as we know it today. It's a change in kind, a totally different animal. In order to allow jets to land at the airport, a couple things have to happen. The runways have to be extended out into the lake and out into the inner harbor. There has to be safety requirements as mandated by Transport Canada, and a whole host of other things. It has a lot of implications. I brought some boards along that I can hold up to show you visually what that means. There was a press conference. Some of you may have heard the news today. It'll be in the papers tomorrow. There was a press conference this morning by Transport Action Ontario. They're a volunteer group, but unbelievably sophisticated and knowledgeable about aviation. They put out what their perspective was on this, and that information will be in the papers tomorrow. Okay, so here's the current proposal. Right now, Porter carries 2.3 million passengers a year from the city center airport. That has grown from when they started to only 26,000 passengers a year. So as you know, a rocket kind of increase. It is now Canada's 9th busiest airport, the way it is today. The existing daily flight movements are capped at 202. So each movement is a landing, and a takeoff is a movement. So no more than 202 movements can take place at the airport. And that's part of that tripartite agreement between the Port Authority, the city, and the federal government that was negotiated in '83. A couple of other just basic issues. Why is this so controversial? Because a lot of people have said to me, maybe some of you, I don't know, well, geez, I'd love to be able to take a jet from there to Florida or California or the Caribbean or Vancouver or whatever, and I'm sure that's true. But in order to do that, there's a lot of things that have to change. First of all, I want you to sort of think, if you go to Florida with your family for a week, a couple of kids, whatever, you've got a lot of luggage. You're not going to take the luggage on the streetcar to get to the airport. You're going to drive there. And you're going to want to have a place to leave your car, etc., etc. Or you're going to take a taxi. And all those landside infrastructure issues are going to mushroom. It's already a mess down there today. So there's an issue about the land side. How does all that stuff get sorted out? What are the implications of that? Then there's also implications on the water side that I'll show you in a second in terms of whether or not these, you know, those buoys that are there called the marine exclusion zones, whether they have to stay there, they have to be expanded, and what the implications are of all that. So I'm going to talk about that. The goal has been stated to grow the airport from 2.3 million today up to 4.8 million, which is the exact same passenger volume as the Ottawa International Airport. So those of you who know Ottawa, you know the airport, how big it is, the footprint of the Ottawa airport, same passenger volume into Little Island Airport. It doesn't take you too long to figure out a lot of problems would result from that. To do all this kind of stuff, they need to amend this tripartite agreement that was negotiated in 1983. And without going into detail, it basically, the key features of that agreement are as follows. Basically, it says no jets. It's turboprops only. That's the first thing. There's hours of operation. There's prohibitions on runway extension, noise requirements, all those kinds of things. To allow jets in there, you have to change that agreement, and that's what the whole debate's all about. Now, in terms of what are the core issues, I think that they really can be simplified in terms of scale, balance of uses on the waterfront, and impact. 3 themes. There's tons of stuff you could put under each of those themes. So I'm going to talk about those for a second. In terms of scale, what do I mean by that? Well, the scale of the airport, it's not going to get any bigger. The runway's extension may happen if it's approved, but the actual piece of land that it's on is what it is today. And the scale of that operation has already got to the point, as I've said, where if you take a taxi down there, or you drive, or you try and take transit down there, it's a real mess right now on Lower Bathurst Street. So that scale question is only going to get a hell of a lot worse if the volumes double and increase. So that's one big set of issues. The other one is in terms of balance. One of the key features of Toronto's waterfront that we've always practiced is the whole notion of balance of land uses. There's recreational, there's residential, there's office, there's entertainment, there's cultural. You know all this stuff, right? It's balanced. It's not dominated by any one use. And our view, my view personally, and others that I've been working on this, basically feel that if jets are permitted, it will overpower the waterfront and dominate and upset that balance. So that's another theme I want you to keep in mind. We can talk about that. And the third is about impact. And the impact is both on the local Bathurst Key neighborhood, because a lot of people live there. As you know, there's a Harbourfront School Community Center there. There was actually proposals to demolish the school and community center to put up a parking garage, if you can believe that. Which just blows your mind away. When I worked for the city for 31 years under 8 mayors. So nothing surprising. But the reality is, except for does. But the reality is, seriously, that this impact that exists now would get a lot worse if this is allowed to happen on the neighborhood. But the other thing is the impact on the central waterfront also is important. And I want you to think about that. Because if permission is granted, jets would come in, land or take off every 3 minutes in the inner harbor. And with the greatest respect, I agree with Mr. Deleuze. I don't think noise is the issue because they have to meet the noise requirements. So noise isn't a big thing. The jets may be quiet. I'll see it when I believe it, but I don't think that's the number one issue. It's the scale, the balance, the impact stuff. So let's sort of set the context, I hope. Now, what I want to do is just kind of wrap up with a couple of key thoughts. I was at the press conference this morning, I was asked to follow up in terms of my thoughts. Several councillors were there. So what are the implications of this Transport Canada, Transport Action Ontario proposal? And what are the implications for council? This council is going to debate this, as I said, in over a week. So here's what I said. First of all, this is about choices and consequences. You got to connect the two. You can't just make a choice and not have a consequence. If you choose to have jets, there's a whole bunch of consequences. If you don't, there are other consequences. So, to be fair about it, that's the framework. The choice, in my view, seriously, is about building a great waterfront over the next 10, 20, 30, 50 plus years, etc., that has those principles of scale, balance, diversity, green, all these things that we're turning the corner now in the waterfront. A lot of good things have started to happen. And you guys, just wait till you see Queens Quay Boulevard next summer, totally remade. The road narrowed from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, massive wide sidewalks, double row of big trees, bike lane dedicated. Phenomenal what it's going to look like. So that's the first thing. If the choice is made to allow the jets, it won't just be, in my view, for Bombardier quiet jets. Because if jets are allowed, it doesn't say in the tripartite agreement we'll amend it to allow only Porter jets. It'll be for jets. So Air Canada, WestJet, United Airlines has already expressed interest. It'll grow into a little Pearson over time, I believe, because the market will prevail. If the permission is there and people want to use it, the market, I think, will take over. And I think that has major consequences. So I think that decision is irreversible. That's what I said this morning. If you go down the road to jets, you can never pull them back. So keep that in mind.